What's up, everyone? Backwards here. I just made a fucking stupid ass short. I don't even know. I don't even. I was really bored, and I saw a meme on Instagram. I thought it was funny if I'd make one on my own and then like basic and then voice over it in a stupid fucking British accent. I don't know. I thought it was funny, so I posted that short. But I'm not gonna substitute an entire video with a really shitty short. But uh, I got a new haircut today, which I'm feeling pretty good about. I got a fade. That's about usually what I always get. I keep it long on the top, or longer on the top, and then fade it in the back and on the sides. And it looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. But what I wanted to talk about today was like Gen Z, especially like young Gen Z. I'm talking like generations from like 2000 like 8 to now is what I'd kind of consider to be a younger Gen Z. Maybe like even 2007 to now. But I'd classify that like that's like the main demographic of Gen Z that seems to be affected by this problem nowadays. And it's this obsession with labels, whether it be your sexuality or mental illnesses. It's this obsession that Gen Z seems to have. I've seen it. I've seen it in my family. My sister, she's she's got Gen Z syndrome. That, as I like to call it, where you find these labels that something like the LGBTQ community or mental health communities tend to have, and a lot of them will claim to be these things while not actually being these things. And I like it's easy to write it off and make fun of people who do that, which I do. I do kind of make fun of that. But like I really kind of want to break down like why this happens. I feel like it's this generation's version of like role playing, basically, of like make believe. I feel like no different than generations before it, though. I feel like what Gen Z does, like what they pick, might be a little more damaging overall than generations before. Because when a Gen Z basically make believes, like that they're, say, non-binary or trans or gay. Not to say that people who do like who are actually like you know are these things. Not to say they're faking it, because that's like the worst thing you can say. It's like, you're faking it. Shut up. But the problem is, Gen Z people and Gen Z, you can kind of tell when somebody's actually one of these things versus when they have Gen Z syndrome, as I say. Especially somebody in my own family, like my sister, who for a while thought she was non-binary, or was saying she was, and then even started telling people that she had a different name that wasn't Sophie, and everybody at her school knows her as Erin for some reason. But the problem is like if you've never had like the like real experiences to know these things, that you are these things, then it comes across as like Gen Z syndrome, like I said. So for the record, I'll just say it here. I am I'm bisexual. I know I am. You see, because that's the difference between me and like somebody with Gen Z syndrome. Is like at first I thought, no. I feel like this goes for a lot of people who might be bi. It's, you've probably thought you were straight your whole life. I did. I did until I got a little experimental, just a little experimental with things. I was like, oh shit. But it's whatever. All right, I like, I can definitely, I'm into dudes sometimes, but sometimes I'm into women. You know, it is what it is. But you have to do the experimentation and like figure this out for yourself. You can't. I don't think you should make believe this just so you can fit into a group, which is what a lot of Gen Z does. I feel that's the reason they do it, is they want to fit in with a group of people. They want to be this label so that they can fit in with a group. But like the problem is like people who do this kind of get all the benefits of being a marginalized group without all the downsides, if you know what I mean. They don't get any of the, like, say they're doing the Gen Z thing where they're not actually trans, but they are basically pretending they are. Maybe not out of malice. I don't think any of it is out of malice most of the time. But it definitely happens, and you definitely can't deny that it does happen. And it's pretty common in Gen Z. It's a culture thing, and I do believe it's very common in Gen Z. Acceptance. There's a difference between like everything becoming more accepted and people. Like, I feel like that's something that this is kind of just a byproduct of these kinds of things being more accepted in every day, that people see it as a trend almost. But you know, that is just an inherent byproduct. It'd be the same for anything. If say racism, if it got super cool to be racist, everybody would be like, oh, I'm racist. I'm racist. I'll say these terrible things. I'll say these terrible things just to look cool, even if they don't believe it. It's the same thing, just with LGBTQ and mental health. And I haven't even touched on mental health yet. But like, the problem with it, like I said, is you get all the benefits. Like back to my example. I was like, you say, let's say somebody's like doing that pretending kind of thing with being trans. They get the social support from certain groups of people that somebody who's trans would get, without the negative kind of sides, because these people, like the people who pretend, they don't get that kind of body dysmorphia. I think it's called dysphoria though for people who are trans. They don't get that because deep down they actually know, they are comfortable with what they are already, but because they are pretending to be trans, they don't really get that gender dysphoria that people who are actually trans get. And when things start getting hate crimey, you can guarantee, you can bet your ass they're switching back to either being straight or being cis. Like you can bet your ass that if things start getting hate crimey, they are no longer doing that. But then again, I would tell everybody I'm straight if hate crimes were involved. So I don't really blame anyone for that. But I do feel like doing this is kind of damaging to these groups. What it really hurts is people who actually are these things, like who actually are trans, actually are bisexual, and they want to come out or they want to transition, but because of Gen Z, they just say, no, you're just faking. People just reactionaries, but it's like textbook reactionaries will go, no, you're just faking. You're just faking it, bro. You're just faking it, when they actually aren't. See, same thing with mental illness. Like, if you have severe mental illness, that is not a fun time. All right, that is debilitating. Uh, I can give examples for this as well. Things like uh, let me like a lot of people will try to be depressed. Now, depression is like the favorite mental disorder, and pretending to have depression goes back even further than like Gen Z. Like that's an old school. That's old school. Like even Tumblr, people on Tumblr were doing that. I think I have I mean, I'm prescribed Prozac, so I think I have depression. I think I could speak on it that it's not very fun. Just because you're sad doesn't mean you're depressed, and you shouldn't self-diagnose yourself with depression. Same thing with people claim to have like schizophrenia. While I don't have schizophrenia, I have had like psychotic episodes and like a history with psychosis in my life. It's something I prefer not to talk about, but I do take antipsychotics, not for that reason exactly, but for like loosely related reasons, and it does help with my history of psychosis. Like um, the the psychosis thing is kind of embarrassing to talk about. Like, again, not something you would want to actually identify with and pretend to be, because there's also social stigma around it. I feel uncomfortable even talking about it, about my experiences. But I can joke around. I can joke around about it. I can joke around about it now. When I was a kid, every night I would stay up till I wouldn't sleep. I just wouldn't sleep because I was absolutely terrified. And it went beyond just like being scared as a kid. No, I was genuinely terrified to my core, to the point where I was staying up all night and hurting my grades academically, probably hurting myself just physically by not sleeping, because I was convinced that there was somebody living in my attic, and if I fell asleep, he was going to come down and kill me. Every night, that was what I'd do. Is in elementary school. Like, I wasn't even in middle school yet, and I was having these kinds of thoughts. It got so bad that there's this one time my parents left me alone, like, to go do something. It was like, maybe it was the first time they ever left me home alone. And I had I would say this probably, this reoccurring thing, I'd say it probably counts as at least somewhat psychotic. Definitely delusion. It definitely fueled by delusion, fear fueled by a delusion I had. But it was so bad that I took a knife, the biggest knife, this big kitchen knife, like Michael Myers type shit. And I was so terrified, I ran around my house. Like, I crept around my house with the knife, just looking for this imaginary murderer I had in my head. And, like, I was terrified of him. Eventually, it went away. Funny enough, they put me on antipsychotics for mood disorder related reasons. But funny enough, once I started taking antipsychotics for the other reason, these delusions and this hyper paranoia kind of went away, to be honest. But when I'll tell you, when I go off of it, it's bad. It gets bad. I could speak for another experience I had not too long ago. This year. No, not this year. Last year. Sorry, time kind of blurs together now. But last year, senior year, I had what was basically a psychotic break. So I'd gone off I'd run out of medicine, run out of antipsychotics. I believe it was, I believe that one was also a mix of things, probably a mix of withdrawal and just psychosis, since I kind of always had symptoms, I guess you could say, of it. But think about this. What I'm talking about now is just like a fraction of what somebody with like schizophrenia goes through. I just have like symptoms. I'm not diagnosing myself with anything. But like I've gone to professionals and they've said before that yes, I do have a history with psychosis. So I'm not like self-diagnosing or going off of anything professionals would say here. But anyways, back to the story. I know I'm kind of droning on, but I feel like I want to give these stories to just put into context how bad these things can really be. And why you shouldn't identify with them if it's not something you've experienced. So basically I'd run out of medicine, and since I'd run out of medicine, the psychosis I would have had, like if I'd just weaned myself off, it was like time, it was doubled basically, because now you add withdrawal onto that, and you got a recipe for fucking disaster. So I was convinced that there was like a fifth dimensional being just controlling my life and keeping me like in a prison basically. And I was going crazy. I was like, I know it, I'm not crazy. I kept saying that. I literally kept saying, I'm not crazy. Literally like that scene in Better Call Saul where he goes, I'm not crazy. That was me. That was what I was being like, basically. And then I went to school, and I kept thinking that, and I kept like looking around, like, and then eventually, I ran out of the school. Like, I was convinced, I'm like, I'm not gonna let you get me. So I ran out of the school and onto the, like, outside of the school. They had to send like the dean of students to go get me. I was just sitting there, kind of like scratching my neck, like itching my head and all that, looking like a crack addict. And she went and got me, and she was, I just told her, it was like, oh, it's just stress. Basically, I told her a lie. It was a full-blown psychotic episode. And, like, so she was like, oh, it's okay, come back anytime you need it. You know, stress can be bad. I basically lied to her. It's also the first time, that was kind of the first time I ever had an auditory hallucination. After I'd had the breakdown kind of thing, I went to class, and my parents were coming to pick me up because I told them about the fucking psychotic break, and they're like, okay, yeah, we're coming to get you. I was sitting there in class just paranoid, and it's the first time I heard somebody whisper my name. I heard them say, like, whisper what my name. I was looking around, and everybody, like, had their heads down, and everyone was quiet. And then I left because my parents got there. And while I was walking, I heard my name whispered again. Which, well, that shit was kind of freaky. I realize now it was an auditory hallucination brought on by withdrawal and psychosis. But, like, it was just... It was a miserable, horrible, terrible experience every time. Every time psychosis and paranoia is involved, it's god awful, and it's not something that you should pretend you have. Like, be like, oh, you know, I'm kind of schizo. I'm kind of like, I have schizophrenia. Silly me. I'm so quirky, and I have DID. And like you don't have these horrific experiences, which is like, it's one, insensitive to do, in my opinion. While yes, I do know most of it is just kind of their version of make-believe and just playing, basically, Gen Z's version. But I mean, it is kind of insensitive when you do it. And then that it actually just makes stigma worse around mental health, because then you got people who are like, oh no, you're just faking your mental illness, you're just faking it. Like, I doubt anybody believes anybody with that has DID anymore. Like if anybody who actually has it says, "Oh, I have dissociative identity disorder," I just kind of call it split personality disorder. Always have. I think that's an outdated term to use, but I don't really care. It's basically the same thing. Dissociative identity is just like a more medical version of split personality. But like somebody who actually has it will say that they have split personality disorder, and they'll be like, someone else will be like, no, you're faking it. I've seen those TikToks. You're faking it. You're faking it. And it's just not good. It's just bad all around, and it's just not something that you should do. Like it's harmful. Frankly, it is a harmful thing to do, and this is just a PSA basically to not don't do that, bro. Like don't do that shit. I really rambled on this video. This is the longest video I've ever made. 21 minutes. Jesus Christ. I don't know why I'm coughing now. But yeah, I really rambled on there, but I wanted to share my experiences with it to really hammer home the point that you should not do these things, and that they are extremely harmful. But yeah, see you next time.